The ultimatum. The silence in the observation deck was absolute. Commander James Rivera stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring at the massive vessel that had appeared in Earth's orbit without warning. It was not a ship in any conventional sense. The structure stretched across the view screen like a city suspended in space, its surface covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and breathe with alien purpose. "How long has it been there?" James asked, his voice steady despite the tension coiling in his chest. 17 minutes, replied Lieutenant Sarah Park from her station. It just appeared. No warp signature, no gravitational distortion, nothing. One moment empty space, the next moment that thing was sitting there like it owned the place. James had spent 20 years in the United Earth Space Command. He had witnessed the colonization of Mars, commanded defensive operations against asteroid threats, and overseen humanity's first exploration beyond the solar system. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it had arrived uninvited. "Communications?" James asked. "They're hailing us," Sarah said. "Broadcasting on every frequency we use. They want to talk." James took a breath. "Put them through." The view screen flickered. The alien city ship remained visible, but now a figure materialized in the foreground. The being was tall, perhaps 8 feet in height, with smooth silver skin that reflected light like polished metal. Its face was angular and symmetrical, with 3 eyes arranged in a triangle formation. It wore no clothing, but its body was adorned with intricate patterns that glowed with soft blue light. When it spoke, the words came through in perfect English, though its mouth did not move. "I am Archon Zevris of the Valoran Empire," the being said. Its voice was neither male nor female, but carried an unmistakable tone of authority. "I address the dominant species of this world. You call yourselves humans. We have been watching you." James stepped forward. "I am Commander James Rivera of the United Earth Space Command. On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to our system. We are pleased to make first contact with your civilization." Archon Zevris tilted its head slightly, and something in the gesture suggested amusement. "First contact? How quaint. Human, this is not a diplomatic visit. This is a notification. The Valoran Empire has maintained order in this galaxy for 1,000 of your years. We have observed 17 species reach the threshold of interstellar capability. 13 of those species were permitted to join the galactic community. 4 were classified as containment species. You are the 5th. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. James felt his jaw tighten. "Containment species? What does that mean?" "It means you are dangerous," Zevris replied. "The Valoran Empire conducts extensive studies of emerging species. We examine your biology, your psychology, your history, and your culture. Our analysis of humanity reveals patterns that cannot be ignored. You are a species defined by aggression, territorial expansion, and violence. Your entire evolutionary history is written in blood." James wanted to protest, but Zevris continued without pause. "You emerged as persistence hunters on your home world, chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. You spread across your planet not through cooperation but through conquest. Every continent bears the scars of your wars. You have committed genocide against your own kind repeatedly throughout your history. Even now, in this moment of unprecedented technological achievement, your nations maintain arsenals capable of destroying your entire civilization multiple times over. We've changed," James said, fighting to keep his voice level. "We've had global peace for 40 years. We've unified our species, eliminated poverty, cured diseases. We're not what we used to be." 40 years, Zevris said, and now there was definitely something like pity in its tone. 40 years of peace after 10,000 years of warfare. Do you truly believe that erases your nature? We have studied your entertainment, your literature, your games. You celebrate warriors. You glorify hunters. You create competitions from everything. Even your concept of love involves winning another person, as if they were a prize to be claimed. The observation deck had filled with other officers and scientists, all listening in stunned silence. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading xenobiologist and cultural liaison, pushed through the crowd. She was a small woman with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that had spent decades studying the possibility of alien life. "Archon Zevris," Elena said, her voice calm and professional. "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez. May I speak?" Zevris turned its triangular gaze toward her. "Proceed. You're judging us based on our evolutionary origins and our history. But surely your own species has a history as well. Surely you weren't always this advanced, this peaceful." Every civilization must evolve. The Valoran people evolved from herbivorous herd animals, Zevers replied. We understand cooperation because survival for our ancestors meant staying together, protecting the weak, sharing resources. When we reached the stars and encountered other species, we found that the most successful civilizations shared this heritage. The galactic community is composed of species that understand peace because they understand fear. We know what it means to be prey. And you think we can't learn that? Elena challenged. You think humans are incapable of empathy, of cooperation, of peace? We think you are capable of mimicking these behaviors when it serves your interests, Zevers said. But your fundamental nature remains unchanged. You are apex predators. You have no natural enemies. You have never known what it means to be hunted, to be helpless, to rely entirely on others for survival. This makes you incompatible with civilized society. James felt anger rising in his chest, hot and fierce. So what exactly are you proposing? You're going to exterminate us because of what our ancestors were? No, Zevers said. The Valoran Empire does not engage in genocide. We are not monsters. But we cannot allow a predator species unrestricted access to the galaxy. Therefore we are implementing containment protocols. You are hereby restricted to your home system. You may not travel beyond the orbital path of your outermost planet. You may not establish colonies beyond your solar system. You may not expand your population beyond 5 billion individuals. These restrictions are permanent. The observation deck erupted in protests and shouts. James raised his hand for silence, but it took several seconds for the noise to die down. And if we refuse? James asked quietly. Then we will enforce compliance, Zevers replied. We have placed inhibitor satellites throughout your system. They are currently in stealth mode, but they can be activated at any time. These satellites are capable of disabling any spacecraft that attempts to leave your designated containment zone. They are also capable of targeting your planet's surface if necessary. We do not wish to use force, but we will not hesitate if you choose defiance. Elena stepped forward again. You can't just imprison an entire species. We have rights. We have dignity. You have what we permit you to have, Zevers said, and now the pity was gone from its voice, replaced by cold certainty. This is not a negotiation. This is a declaration. You have 90 of your days to accept these terms. During that time, you will cease all space exploration activities. You will dismantle your military spacecraft. You will submit to our monitoring. If you comply, you will be allowed to live in peace within your containment zone. We will provide you with certain technologies to improve your quality of life. You will want for nothing except freedom. And if we don't comply? James asked, though he already knew the answer. Then we will demonstrate why the Valoran Empire has maintained peace in this galaxy for 1,000 years, Zevers said. We do not wish to destroy you. But we will not allow you to become a threat. The choice is yours. You have 90 days. The transmission ended. The alien city ship remained in orbit, silent and massive, a constant reminder of the ultimatum that had just been delivered. James stood in the observation deck, surrounded by his crew, and felt the weight of humanity's future pressing down on his shoulders. Sir, Sarah said quietly. What do we do? James looked at the alien vessel, then at the blue curve of Earth visible through the viewport. Somewhere down there, 7 billion people were going about their lives, unaware that their species had just been sentenced to eternal imprisonment. We call an emergency session of the World Council, James said. Every nation, every leader, every voice that matters. We have 90 days to decide if we're going to live in a cage or die on our feet. Elena touched his arm. There might be another option. James looked at her. What option? We show them they're wrong about us, Elena said. We prove that humans are more than predators. We demonstrate that we're capable of being civilized. In 90 days? James asked. We've done harder things, Elena replied. But as James looked at the alien ship dominating Earth's orbit, he wondered if that was true. Humanity had survived ice ages and plagues, wars and disasters. They had split the atom and walked on the moon. But they had never faced an enemy that could destroy them with a thought, an enemy that had already judged them and found them wanting. The 90-day countdown had begun. And James had no idea if humanity would survive to see day 91. The Hunter's response. The emergency session of the World Council convened within 12 hours of the Valoran ultimatum. Representatives from every nation gathered in Geneva, their faces projected on massive screens that lined the circular chamber. James Rivera stood at the center podium, flanked by Dr. Elena Vasquez and General Marcus Chin, the head of Earth's unified military command. The debate had raged for 3 days without resolution. Some nations advocated for immediate surrender, arguing that survival within containment was better than extinction. Others demanded defiance, insisting that humanity could not accept eternal imprisonment. The chamber echoed with passionate speeches in dozens of languages, each translated in real time, each voice convinced of its own righteousness. On the 4th day something changed. A young woman from the African Union, a cybersecurity specialist named Amara Okafor, requested permission to speak. She was not a politician or a military leader, and many questioned why she had been given a seat at this historic gathering. But when she spoke, her words cut through the chaos like a blade. "We're asking the wrong question," Amara said, her voice steady and clear. "We're debating whether to fight or surrender, whether to live free or die trying. But we're thinking like prey animals. We're thinking like the Valerans expect us to think. We need to think like what we actually are." "And what are we?" asked the Chinese premier, his tone suggesting skepticism. "Hunters," Amara replied. "The Valerans are right about our nature. We are predators. But they've made a critical error. They think being a predator makes us mindless and violent. They don't understand what hunting actually means. Real hunters don't charge blindly at their prey. They observe. They learn. They adapt. They strike when and where the enemy least expects it." James felt something shift in his mind, a perspective changing like a door opening onto a new landscape. "You're suggesting we don't fight them on their terms." "Exactly," Amara said. "They've placed inhibitor satellites throughout our system. They're watching our military installations, our spacecraft, our communications. They expect us to either surrender or launch some kind of conventional attack. We do neither. We make them think we're complying while we prepare for something they can't anticipate." General Chen leaned forward, interest sparking in his eyes. "Continue." "The Valerans have been in power for 1,000 years, Amara explained. "They've dealt with 4 other containment species before us. They have protocols, procedures, expectations. They're bureaucratic. They're predictable. And most importantly, they've never encountered a species that thinks the way we do. Every civilization they've met evolved from prey animals. They understand fear-based thinking. They don't understand hunting-based thinking." Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly. "She's right. In our first conversation with Archon Zevris, it spoke about cooperation and herd mentality. Their entire worldview is built on collective safety, on avoiding risk. That's why they've maintained peace for so long. They're so afraid of conflict that they preemptively eliminate any potential threat." "Which means they're vulnerable," James said, the pieces falling into place in his mind. "They've never had to fight an opponent who doesn't play by their rules. They've never faced an enemy that uses asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, psychological operations." The chamber fell silent. Every representative was listening now, leaning forward in their seats, sensing that something important was happening. "What are you proposing?" asked the Brazilian president. James looked at General Chen, at Dr. Vasquez, at Amara. He saw the same understanding in their eyes. "We're proposing that we show the Valerans what humans do best. We hunt. But we don't hunt their ships or their technology. We hunt their confidence. We hunt their certainty. We hunt their control." Over the next 86 days, humanity engaged in the most elaborate deception in its history. Publicly, Earth's governments announced compliance with the Valeran demands. Military spacecraft were decommissioned in full view of the alien monitoring systems. Space exploration programs were officially suspended. The world's leaders gave speeches about accepting their place in the galactic order, about learning to live within limitations. But beneath the surface, a different transformation was taking place. Every nation contributed resources to what became known as Operation Persistence, named after humanity's ancient hunting strategy. Scientists worked around the clock in facilities that the Valeran satellites couldn't detect, buried deep underground or hidden within seemingly innocuous civilian structures. Engineers developed new technologies based on principles the aliens wouldn't recognize because they'd never needed them. The key insight came from Dr. Vasquez and her team of xenobiologists. They had studied every scrap of information about the Valerans, analyzing their language, their ship design, their communication patterns. What they discovered was both obvious and profound. The Valerans thought in terms of hierarchy, centralized control, and predictable systems. They had built an empire that functioned like a well-ordered machine, with every part working in harmony. Humans, by contrast, had evolved as creative problem solvers who excelled in chaos. Where the Valerans saw disorder as something to be eliminated, humans saw it as an opportunity. This fundamental difference became the foundation of Earth's strategy. James stood in the hidden command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching the countdown clock tick toward zero. 90 days had passed. The Valoran city ship remained in Earth's orbit, patient and immovable. Across the solar system, humanity held its breath. The transmission from Archon Zevris came precisely on schedule. The alien appeared on every screen, its triangular eyes reflecting the cold light of certainty. Humanity, your time has expired. Have you accepted the terms of containment? James, broadcasting from what appeared to be a government building but was actually a carefully constructed set, stepped forward. Archon Zevris, we have considered your offer carefully. We understand your concerns about our species. We acknowledge our violent history. And we have decided that we cannot accept permanent containment. The alien's three eyes blinked in perfect synchronization. Then you choose extinction. This is unfortunate but not unexpected. We will begin enforcement procedures immediately. Your world will be subjected to a technological inhibition field that will prevent any electronic device from functioning. This will continue until you reconsider. Before you do that, James said calmly, I'd like to show you something. Zevris tilted its head. Show me what? What humans do when we're given 90 days to prepare, James replied. Across the solar system, dozens of small vessels activated simultaneously. They weren't military ships in any conventional sense. They were civilian craft, mining vessels, exploration drones, even modified cargo haulers. Each one had been retrofitted with technology that the Valorans hadn't thought to look for because it didn't match their understanding of warfare. The vessels didn't attack the Valoran city ship. Instead, they dispersed throughout the system, each one broadcasting a different frequency, a different pattern, a different message. Within seconds, the carefully ordered monitoring network that the Valorans had established began to experience interference. Not destruction but confusion. Simultaneously, every human colony in the solar system, from Mars to the moons of Jupiter, activated communication jammers that Dr. Vasquez's team had hidden in plain sight disguised as civilian infrastructure. The Valoran monitoring satellites suddenly found themselves swimming in a sea of conflicting data, unable to distinguish real threats from phantom signals. What are you doing? Zevris demanded, and for the first time, James heard something new in the alien's voice. Uncertainty. We're demonstrating something you don't understand, James said. You think being a predator means being violent and aggressive. But the best hunters aren't the ones who charge in blindly. The best hunters are the ones who make their prey uncertain, who control the information environment, who strike from unexpected angles. On the main view screen, James could see the Valoran city ship attempting to respond. But its systems were designed for overwhelming force against predictable enemies. The ship's defensive protocols couldn't handle the distributed, chaotic approach that humanity was employing. It was like trying to catch smoke with your hands. This is a minor inconvenience, Zevris said, but the confidence in its voice had cracked. We can adapt our systems to filter your interference. You can, James agreed. In fact, I'm counting on it. Because while you're adapting to this, you're not paying attention to everything else. Dr. Vasquez stepped into the frame. Archon Zevris, we've been studying your empire for 90 days. We've analyzed your ship designs, your communication patterns, your social structures. Do you know what we've discovered? You're stable. You're orderly. You're efficient. And you're absolutely terrified of chaos. We value order, Zevris said stiffly. Order brings peace. Order brings stagnation, Elena countered. You've maintained peace for 1,000 years by eliminating anything that threatens your predictability. But you've also stopped growing, stopped evolving, stopped adapting. You've become so afraid of disruption that you've forgotten how to handle it. Amara Okafor appeared on another screen, broadcasting from a location on Earth's surface. Right now, we have 17 teams working on 17 different approaches to bypass your inhibitor satellites. We don't need all of them to work. We only need one. And you won't know which one until it's too late. That's what makes us dangerous, Archon. Not our violence, but our creativity. Not our aggression, but our refusal to accept that any problem is unsolvable. The Valoran city ship suddenly lurched, a movement so slight that most observers wouldn't have noticed. But James saw it and he knew what it meant. Somewhere, one of the human teams had succeeded in something. He didn't know what and he didn't need to. The lurch was enough. It meant the Valorans' perfect control had been broken, even if only for a moment. You're making a mistake, Zevris said, and now the alien's voice carried something that sounded almost like desperation. We have the power to destroy your entire world. We can eliminate your species with a single command. Why would you risk this? General Chin spoke for the first time. Because we're humans. We've been facing extinction since we climbed down from the trees. Every predator on Earth wanted to eat us. We were slower than the big cats, weaker than the bears, more vulnerable than almost everything else. But we're still here. Do you know why? Zevras didn't respond. Because we never gave up, Chin continued. Because when something tried to eat us, we figured out how to eat it instead. Because when we faced an enemy we couldn't beat with strength, we beat it with intelligence. Because we're the species that turned wolves into dogs and made fire our servant. You're right that we're predators. But you don't understand what that really means. It doesn't mean we're violent. It means we're determined. It means we adapt. It means we never ever stop hunting. James watched the Valoran ship on his screens. He could see other vessels beginning to appear, backup forces responding to what must seem like an attack. But they were moving slowly, uncertainly, trying to understand what they were facing. They were used to enemies that fought in predictable ways, species that could be contained because they thought in terms of territory and defense. They had never faced an enemy that thought in terms of persistence, that viewed every setback as just another problem to solve, that treated impossibility as merely a temporary condition. We're going to make you an offer, Archon Zevras, James said. And it's the only offer you're going to get. You're going to remove your containment order. You're going to withdraw your inhibitor satellites. You're going to recognize humanity as a sovereign species with the right to explore and expand as we see fit. In return, we'll join your galactic community as equals. We'll share our knowledge, our creativity, our perspective. We'll help you solve problems you didn't even know you had. And if we refuse? Zevras asked. Then we'll show you what 1,000 years of stagnation has cost you, James replied. We've had 90 days and we've already found dozens of vulnerabilities in your systems. Imagine what we could do with a year. With 10 years. With a century. We're patient hunters, Archon. We can wait as long as it takes. And eventually, we will find a way to take down prey much bigger than ourselves. That's what we do. That's what we've always done. The silence stretched between Earth and the Valoran ship. James could feel his heart pounding in his chest, but he kept his expression calm and confident. This was the moment everything depended on. If the Valorans called their bluff, if they decided to simply destroy Earth rather than accept the uncertainty humanity represented, then it was over. But James had studied the aliens carefully. He had learned to read the subtle shifts in Zevras's posture, the slight changes in its voice. And what he saw now was fear. Not fear of human violence or human weapons, but fear of something much more profound. Fear of the unknown. Fear of losing control. Fear of an opponent that didn't follow the rules. The Valorans had spent 1,000 years eliminating threats. They had built a perfect empire by destroying anything that challenged their order. But in doing so, they had forgotten how to actually fight. They had become so dependent on their overwhelming advantage that they had no strategy for dealing with an enemy that refused to be overwhelmed. Finally, Archon Zevras spoke. This is unprecedented. No species has ever responded this way to containment protocols. We must consult with the Valoran High Council. You do that, James said. We'll be right here. We're not going anywhere. The transmission ended. The city ship remained in orbit, but something had changed. The air of absolute authority was gone, replaced by hesitation and uncertainty. The Valorans were no longer certain they could control humanity, and that uncertainty was more powerful than any weapon Earth could have built. 3 days later, the Valoran fleet withdrew from Earth's system. The inhibitor satellites were deactivated and removed. And humanity received a formal invitation to join the galactic community not as a contained species, but as a provisional member with the right to expand and explore under observation. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't complete freedom. But it was a beginning. And humans had always been good at turning beginnings into something more. James stood in the observation deck, watching the last Valoran ship disappear into faster-than-light travel. Dr. Vasquez joined him, a tired smile on her face. We did it, she said. We actually did it. We showed them what we are, James replied. Not monsters. Not mindless predators. But survivors. Problem solvers. Hunters who never give up. They'll be watching us closely, Elena warned. One mistake and they might try containment again. Let them watch, James said. They'll see what humans are capable of when we're given the chance. And eventually, they'll realize that having us as allies is much better than having us as enemies. Far across the galaxy, in the Valoran High Council chambers, Archon Zevras delivered a report on the human situation. The council members listened in silence, their triangular eyes reflecting concern and confusion. What is your recommendation? asked the High Counselor. Zevris considered carefully before responding. We should allow them to expand. But more than that, we should study them. These humans think differently than any species we have encountered. They see problems where we see impossibilities. They find opportunities where we see only risk. Perhaps after 1,000 years of perfect order, the galaxy needs something we have forgotten how to be. And what is that? The High Counselor asked. Unpredictable, Zevris replied. The humans are right. We have become stagnant in our perfection. We have eliminated all threats, but in doing so, we have eliminated all growth. Perhaps it is time we learn something new. And perhaps the best teachers are the ones who refuse to be tamed. Back on Earth, James Rivera looked up at the stars and smiled. Humanity had been given a warning. They had been told they were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too aggressive to be allowed freedom. And in response, they had demonstrated exactly why trying to cage a human was the most dangerous thing any alien species could attempt. Because humans were hunters. And the thing about hunters was simple and eternal. They always found a way. The end.